Welcome back, seekers of the macabre. Tonight, we delve into two bone-chilling tales from the Iron Tracks. If you are a train driver, a frequent passenger, or even just someone who watches the locomotives pass from the shadows, consider this a warning. You must see these stories. Stay tuned, because the second tale is so deeply disturbing that I bet 90% of you won't be able to finish it. Let's begin. I never believed in hauntings. I believed in logic, in measurable phenomena. Until November 8, 2024, when everything I thought I knew about reality began to unravel. We moved into the house on the edge of town because it was cheap and quiet, and I thought living closer to nature might help with my insomnia. I'd always envied people who slept through storms, car alarms, or thunderstorms. I couldn't. My dreams were thin and jagged, broken up by random sounds and silence. The first week was quiet, too quiet. I didn't realize that some silences have weight, and some nights hum with things you can't see. It began at exactly 2:14 a.m. I woke to a whistle loud enough to shake the window pane. Not faint, not distant. Woo woo! I checked the clock. 2:14. My wife stirred, murmuring about the loud sound, joking about living next to a train track. But according to maps and historical records, the nearest line had been abandoned decades ago, overgrown, unusable. And yet, the whistle came again the following night, same time. The second night, it was sharper, deeper, like someone had aimed the horn at our bedroom. My chest vibrated with the sound. I pulled on a jacket and went outside, scanning the yards, the empty streets, the edge of the woods. Nothing. No train, no lights, no movement. But the whistle was there, precise, unyielding. I began logging times, volumes, pitch differences. Every night at 2:14 a.m. Exactly. 3 nights in, the sound began to linger. It didn't fade into distance. It wrapped around the house, vibrating in rhythm with my heartbeat. Then the ground trembled, subtle at first, but stronger with each note. My watch blinked. Time skipped 6 minutes. My notes for that night, blank. I scoured train schedules, maintenance logs, and local history. Nothing. Yet the phenomenon persisted. My wife stopped sleeping in the bedroom, claiming she could hear breathing behind the whistle. I dismissed it at first. Stress, she said. But then I heard it too. Low, rhythmic, unnatural. One night, the whistle didn't start at all. I thought I was relieved, but the silence that filled the house was worse. Then came movement, slow, deliberate steps, on the wooden floorboards behind my bedroom. The rhythm was almost in sync with the phantom whistle I had imagined. Morning brought more confusion. My wife was gone. No note, no sign she had packed. Her side of the bed was untouched, cold. I called her phone repeatedly, straight to voicemail. I tried to calm myself, but my thoughts felt fragmented, my memory slipping. Night came again, 2:14 a.m. The whistle blew louder than ever. I recorded it, played it back, enhanced it, only static. Then the sound shifted. 2:09 a.m. Clipped metallic layers beneath the train horn, scraping sounds I couldn't place. The breathing returned, synchronized, almost communicating. Whispered phrases, impossible to decipher, layered beneath every note. I found myself outside at odd hours, wandering without realizing it. I woke in the kitchen, the yard, my neighbor's driveway. Unsure how I got there. The line between sleep and wakefulness blurred. One night, reviewing old recordings, I noticed a faint, warped echo beneath the whistle. It wasn't a train. It was older, distant, like a memory of a train. I remembered a derailment decades ago on that abandoned track. Dozens had died. Some said the whistle never truly stopped. I dismissed it then. Ghost stories have endings. This didn't. Time lost meaning. 2:14 a.m. became a marker of something outside reality. Breaths between whistles matched a human heart rate, but stretched, distorted. The whistle had become a timing device, a bridge between something external and the deep recesses of my mind. 3 nights passed with no sound. Then, at 2:14 a.m. on the third night, I heard footsteps inside the house. Slow, deliberate, pacing behind my bedroom door. Floorboards creaked at 30-second intervals. A whisper, quiet but clear, "Don't sleep." I froze, paralyzed. The next instant, a jagged red light flashed through the blinds. I checked the clock, 2:14 a.m. The whistle began again. This time, the sound penetrated my skull, vibrating my teeth. My vision blurred. The room stretched and collapsed in on itself. Shadows moved against the walls. The breathing was louder, faster, synchronized with every heartbeat. My wife's absence was palpable. I realized I had been alone, but not alone. Weeks passed. The whistle shifted again. Now it began at 2:10 a.m. Each note was sharper, colder, carrying an almost human intent. I tried leaving the house, driving away, but the sound followed. It wasn't outside anymore. It was everywhere, inside my head, inside the car, inside my very bones. I realized I was being tracked or measured. I slept less. Days merged into nights. I began hallucinating faint silhouettes moving outside the window at 2:14 a.m. I saw shadowed faces with hollow eyes staring at me, unblinking. Sometimes they disappeared when I tried to focus. Other times I could swear they mimicked my movements. One night, the whistle returned early, 1:59 a.m. I panicked. I left the house, keys in hand, driving with no destination. Every street was silent, empty, but the horn blasted behind me, bouncing off the trees and buildings as if chasing me, laughing at me. My dashboard clock flickered. Time skipped again. I returned home, 2:14 a.m. The whistle, the steps, the breathing. It all resumed as if I had never left. I recorded everything, posted online, hoping someone could explain it. Experts dismissed it. Acoustic anomaly, stress, faulty equipment. But they hadn't heard it. Not really. The weeks turned into months. I kept notes, recordings, and journals, documenting every change. Whistle patterns shifted. Steps grew faster. Breaths became sharper. I started to see shapes in daylight, faint, peripheral movements that vanished if I looked directly. The house itself seemed alive, pulsing with the rhythm of the phantom train. At some point, I lost track of reality entirely. I no longer knew whether I was awake, asleep, or somewhere in between. The whistle became part of me. Its breath, its rhythm, its echo, my heartbeat. I know the world outside still exists. I've seen it, vaguely. But something inside the house knows me now. It measures me, waits for me, and it always calls at 2:14 a.m. I've stopped trying to leave. Any attempt to escape ends with the same sound, the same pulse, the same creeping dread. I don't know if it's a ghost, a machine, or something else. I only know it waits, and I can never sleep. The whistle still comes, every night, like clockwork. And sometimes, in the silence after, I think I hear her voice, my wife, calling my name. But when I rush to the window, there is nothing, only darkness and the whistle. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? I woke up disoriented, staring into darkness, the rhythmic thrum of steel on steel reverberating against my ribcage like some ancient heartbeat. My eyes opened, and the first thing I noticed was how wrong everything looked. The seats, the lights, the narrow aisle. Nothing matched the memory of boarding a train that afternoon. I reached to check my phone. Dead. No notifications, no missed calls, not even the comforting glow of a clock. My watch, frozen at 2:43 a.m., told me nothing. I didn't remember falling asleep, getting on this train, or even where I thought I was going. My first thought wasn't fear, it was confusion. Then the realization hit. I had absolutely no idea where I was or how I got there. The compartment was dim, lit only by a series of weak fluorescent bulbs overhead, flickering in a stuttering rhythm that made shadows spill and warp across the cracked vinyl seats. I sat up slowly, every muscle tense, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. I turned my head and caught sight of the other passengers, or what I thought were passengers. They were frozen, half a dozen figures sitting perfectly still, staring forward with expressions that didn't change, like mannequins caught mid-gesture in a photograph that never developed. When I dared to look again, their faces seemed just slightly different, as if they were shifting in my peripheral vision. I blinked, not once, but 3 times, and still they stared, grotesque and unnatural, like unfinished portraits of human faces. I swallowed hard and tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat felt dry, clogged with the weight of that silent emptiness. The train's slow, tireless motion droned in my ears, a sound too steady to ignore and too meaningless to interpret. I forced myself to rise, gripping the edge of the seat so hard my knuckles whitened. I passed down the aisle, cautiously eyeing each motionless figure. Not one blinked, not one breathed. Their stillness was complete, and yet I knew, in that small, shrinking part of my mind reserved for denial, that they weren't lifeless dummies. They weren't just props. There was something that shouldn't be right about the way they existed. I took a step toward the door at the far end, where a conductor should have been on duty, a uniformed person ready to announce the next stop or answer a confused passenger's question. Instead, I heard a voice right beside my ear, stern and detached. "Tickets, please." I spun around, startled, and saw a man in a conductor's uniform standing inches from me, though I had no memory of him approaching. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't even facing me. His back was partially turned, eyes fixed somewhere beyond my presence, and yet he spoke directly into my head as if he already knew me. I reached for my pocket and found a paper ticket in my hand, stamped and folded like something issued at random, not electronic, not mine. "End of the line," he said, punching the ticket before sliding it back into my palm. I stared at that paper ticket, bewildered. I didn't remember buying a ticket. I didn't remember boarding this train. And most unsettling of all, I couldn't tell where the train was headed. Through the grimy window beside me, the world blurred past in bleak, nondescript motion. Barren fields, skeletal trees, skeletal horizons with no signs of life, no streetlights, no buildings, just that endless mute night passing by. I felt like I could ride for hours or days, seeing nothing but the same featureless landscape. I tried to sit, to calm myself, but my legs felt weak. I wasn't sure if it was exhaustion or the creeping fear settling in my veins. I tried speaking again. "Excuse me," I said, voice trembling. "Where are we headed?" Nothing. Not a response. Not even a shift in the conductor's stance. It was like the question dissolved into air as soon as it left my mouth. I backed away slowly. And that's when I noticed that the conductor's head was turned so far that I couldn't see his face directly, only the back of his jacket as he continued down the aisle, methodically punching tickets and repeating, in the same hollow voice, "End of the line." The phrase burrowed into my mind like some relentless echo. End of the line. End of the line. End of the line. It reverberated with an almost hypnotic insistence, as though it was not just a destination, but a command. I forced myself to look again at the passengers. The expressions on their faces were wrong, frozen, awful, pre-recorded pain that had nothing to do with the stillness around them. And in that moment, a terrible realization hit me. I wasn't just on a strange train. I was inside something that wasn't normal, something engineered to look like a train but to do something else entirely. I stumbled toward the window and tried to open it, anything to see the earth outside more clearly. But the window was sealed, no latch, no handle, as though even the simplest escape had been stripped away from me. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, watching our relentless motion. My reflection stared back at me, pale and uncertain, eyes wide with disbelief. I blinked, and when my eyes opened again, the faces in the seats closest to me had subtly changed, their grimaces now looking almost like sudden, silent cries, as though they were trying to communicate, but trapped in pantomime. I recoiled. The train lurched slightly then, as if reacting to my fear. Not a bump, not a swerve, just a shift, subtle but noticeable. I swallowed hard and moved away from the window. My heartbeat thumped in my ears, louder each second. I realized that sitting still was no longer an option. I had to find a way off this thing. I had to find out where it was heading. I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my nerves, and began walking toward the conductor once more. Each footstep felt heavier than the last. The aisle seemed narrower, the air thicker. The flickering lights overhead buzzed with an electrical pulse that synchronized, unsettlingly, with the pounding in my skull. I approached him again, tried tapping his shoulder, asking about stops, about schedules, about where this train even started. His response was identical. "Remain seated until we stop. It's for your own safety." And still he moved with that unsettling precision, ticket in hand, punching unseen passes for passengers who stayed eerily still. I recoiled and stumbled back into my seat, breath catching. I tried to think rationally. Could this be a dream? Some post-work blackout? A microscopic neurological event? Injuries can warp perception. Medication can alter memory. But none of my attempts to ground myself worked. No matter how many times I pinched myself, squeezed my own arm, called out for help, nothing changed. The train kept moving. The conductor kept repeating those words. The faceless passengers kept staring. Then I noticed something else, a detail I had missed before. The seats weren't attached to the floor as they should be. They were bolted loosely, unevenly, like someone had installed them in a rush, without regard for structure. The overhead luggage racks were dented and misshapen, as if something heavy had been sliding along them for a long time. The lights flickered in patterns that made no sense, not the random strobe of old wiring, but deliberate pulses almost like Morse code. I strained to read them. My mind, already unsteady, tried to impose meaning where there shouldn't have been any. I knew I had to do something drastic. The emergency brake handle stood at the end of the carriage, a bright red lever marked clearly, designed to stop a train in an emergency. I rose, heart hammering, and made my way there, ignoring the silent glares of the frozen passengers. Every step felt like wading through thick water, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I reached out, gripped the handle, and pulled with every ounce of strength I had. The train didn't slow gradually. It stopped instantly. 1 second, we were hurtling through a void of darkness. The next, we were motionless, silent, as if an invisible barrier had snapped us in place. The sudden stop should have hurled me forward, should have thrown me against the wall, but it didn't. I stood there, hands trembling on the brake, staring at the vacant landscape outside. Not black, not moonlit, but an indistinct gray that didn't look like earth, sky, or horizon. I opened the door. The ground was frozen and silent. No sound of crickets, no distant hum of traffic, no rustling wind, just an awful, oppressive stillness. The conductor stood in the doorway, watching me, not moving, not breathing, just watching. "End of the line," he said again, voice calm. But something in his tone had changed. It was colder, more deliberate, like a declaration, not a direction. I stepped off the train. I backed away, unsure where I was. The sky was a featureless gray. No stars, no moon, no sunrise. My breaths formed small puffs in the frigid air. I turned to look at the train, expecting to see wheels, tracks, lights. It stood there, silent and motionless. Then I noticed the pattern of the windows. In the last carriage, someone was looking out. A figure, face contorted, hands pressed against the glass, mouth open in a wordless scream. But when I blinked, the image was gone. And that's when I realized it wasn't a person, it was a cutout, just like the passengers. I sank to my knees, a cold dread rising in my chest. What was that train? What was I? Why was I here? I tried to stand, to walk in any direction, but the emptiness around me seemed to shift, the shadows stretching with some silent awareness. A light flickered in the distance, not far, but not close either. The only sign of possible life. I swallowed hard and began walking toward it. Step by step, the ground beneath my boots seemed to pulse, like the heartbeat of something alive. And with every step I took, the word echoed in my mind. End of the line. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And tell us in the comments which part scared you the most, and drop your ideas in the comments. Your idea might be our next nightmare.